through deep listening, expand what's possible and get really incredible new insights.
This is Lady Balls Radio, a celebration of women who've let their own brand of awesome shine through, and inspiration for those looking to do the same. I'm your host, Connie Constantine. Welcome everybody to another episode of Lady Balls Radio. We are so lucky to have Lauren Waggoner as our guest today. She has got such an impressive bio, seriously guys. Let me just give you a little bit about Lauren and then we will dive right in. She is a lifelong dancer and musician. Her life's passion is to uplift and empower others through music, sound, and presence. She's a sound healing artist, a Kundalini yoga and meditation instructor, a Hatha Vinyasa yoga teacher, and an executive and creative in both the music and film industries. Oh, and she's also a slacker, as you can tell.
Busted.
I know, busted. No, so just kidding. But no, we were talking about her being a sound healing artist. She's trained in gong and the sound current for 5 years with Sotantar. Is that it? Sotantar at the Gong Avatar Academy. She is a member of the Sound, Voice, and Music in the Healing Arts cohort at California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, studies transformational yoga of the voice with the phenomenal Sylvia Nakash, and counts composer, scientist, and tuning fork pioneer Dr. John Beaulieu among her most cherished teachers. And I'm excited to dive into the science part of this today for sure. So expect those questions to be coming. She's also a devoted student of Guru Dev Singh and the meditative healing modality Satnam Rasayan, in which she is certified as a student teacher. She became a Kundalini yoga and meditation instructor in 2011 and has trained worldwide with some incredible teachers, including Gurmukh, Guru Singh, Tej, Harijawan, and Sat Siri. For those of you not familiar with Kundalini, these are some pretty heavy hitters in that world. So it's very impressive. She also became a certified yoga Mazay instructor, and she studied directly under Noah Mazay and Rocky Heron. She did that just this year. What we're going to be talking about today, probably more in depth, is a special curriculum she has created called Soundology, the study and experience of sound healing. It puts equal emphasis on understanding the science behind how and why sound heals and experiencing the healing effects of sound. She currently teaches weekly classes in Soundology at Wanderlust Hollywood and also offers personalized sound healing sessions for individual clients in the Los Angeles area, as well as sound baths and yoga sessions for private and corporate groups. And I just have to add a little personal note here. As someone who gets the gift of taking one of those weekly classes almost every week I'm there, she delivers on her life's passion of uplifting and empowering others, for sure. So, oh my gosh, Lauren,
thank you.
All that, you rock, girl. You are so freaking amazing. And we are so excited to have you here. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, the name of this show, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here.
Yes, you need to have lady balls to be asked to be on Lady Balls. So I am grateful to have you here. So before we get more into soundology and sound healing specifically, and like we were talking about earlier, some of the science behind it, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story. What brought you to, I guess the pathway was through Kundalini and then into sound healing. But what brought you into that world?
Not to go too far back into my childhood or anything, but I think it all started when I was little and when I was a child and even a teenager, where, I was dancing, I was doing music, I was singing, and I found that those things connected me with sort of my truest self. And as I became a teenager and went into college, I was completely obsessed with self-realization and just kind of digging in deep and getting at the truth of who I am. And And the moments that I was connected with sound and immersed in sound and listening to music and creating music, and also the moments that I was dancing or using my body in a conscious way, those are the times that I would feel the most authentic and the most connected. So, now I'm starting to really understand why that was, but back then, that's kind of how I think I eventually got to Kundalini Yoga, which did lead me to sound healing. My introduction to Kundalini Yoga was actually very interesting. I was a Hatha yogi and practiced a lot of Hatha and Vinyasa, and which I just kind of gotten into because it was sort of related to dancing. It was kind of like, oh, I'm flexible. Right. I'm gonna try this other thing and like enjoy how flexible I am.
Yeah.
But that was kind of what it was about at the beginning. It was like sort of just an athletic thing. But eventually I started to recognize, and so did my roommates at the time, that I was a much more peaceful and happy person when I was practicing yoga. And sometimes I would get the question, this very gentle, like, Lauren, have you gone to yoga lately? When I was maybe feeling or acting a little stressed out. They had it all figured out before I did. But anyway.
I love that. That's my husband's like, it makes me think of like, do you have meditation today? You get that question. I guess I do.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sometimes things are so much more transparent than we think. Like, right. Total side note, I always thought I had this great poker face, and come to realize apparently you can read me like a book, like just by looking at my face. So anyhow, so I eventually started to realize just how incredible yoga was for stress and anxiety relief. Right. So it was like a really great tool as I entered the film and music industries. And I mean, that's like long, hard hours and tons of stress. And so that was kind of a lifesaver. And I was reading in like some kind of LA yoga magazine, I think free LA yoga magazine, something about a workshop called White Tantric Yoga. And the writer was like, yeah, it's this kind of weird thing where like you put a white hat on and you sit with a partner and stare them in the eyes for 8 hours. and he goes, but I've never felt so good ever. He's like, I'm living my best life right now. I feel like I'm on top of the world. And so I kind of like made note of that and looked it up and noticed it was going to happen in like 5 months. This was several years ago. And I put it on my calendar. And long story short, ended up there 5 months later, kind of looking around, not knowing what I was doing. And it's an all-day Kundalini yoga and meditation thing, just like super intense Kundalini meditations. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life. I just fell in love with Kundalini yoga that day. It kind of lifted, the most simple way I can describe it is it sort of lifted this, just kind of like this depression almost that had kind of descended upon me, in my preteen years. And I'd kind of wrestled with that ever since. And it kind of like poked through and lifted that. And I started to become more conscious of my actions and my thoughts and how to deal with those. And it was from there that I heard the gong for the first time and experienced sound healing. And that was just that perfect intersection of music, which is my passion, and conscious self-realization techniques. And that was it for me.
That is so interesting. So the White Tantric Yoga, who did you study with there? Was it, you said Kundalini per se, so was that one of the instructors we were talking about earlier that you studied under?
It wasn't. So White Tantric Yoga, it's a 1-day workshop that kind of travels around. It generally happens every Saturday in a different city every year. Yeah. And basically it takes, what it is, there's a handful of, facilitators, none of whom were my teachers that I studied with, but there's a handful of facilitators who were trained to lead it. And, it's just, hundreds of people sitting and facing their partner and doing special breathing techniques, special mantras, holding their arms in fingers in mudra positions, and just the interaction of the energies of everybody together kind of amplifies the impact of the meditation technology that you're doing. So basically, it's a series of either 31 or 62-minute meditations back to back to back. So it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Where, you could be holding your arms up for like 31 or 62 minutes. And for a Kundalini beginner, that was a total shock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like we had to do our first one, Connie, was, oh my gosh. So I had gone with my boyfriend at the time, and he was new too. We didn't know what we had just walked into. And we were sitting there staring at each other. And what we had to do was hold our arms up, like parallel in front of our shoulders. And then for 62 minutes, do the meditation, hud, 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 like at that speed. And about 30 seconds in, we're staring at each other. Our eyes are like as wide as saucers. And I'm thinking, how can I breathe? I can't breathe. And my arms are going to fall off. And I have to say, like, by the end of that 62 minutes, I felt amazing. And just to be able to put your mind to something, it's kind of like any physical feat, though, like from running on a treadmill to like doing a swimming thing, like you start to realize just how much control you actually have over your body if you put your mind to it, and you push past that resistance point of I can't, you really get that, that endorphin rush and that reinforcement that you are really powerful.
62 minutes. That takes the lady balls.
It does.
Oh my gosh.
That's when I first got my lady balls.
Yeah, no, seriously. And I don't care how athletic any of us are, like going into something like that is a whole new ball game. So I have all new respect. I will not, like next time we're doing Ego Eradicator in one of your classes, I'll be like, I got this. This is nothing.
Yes.
This is like, I could be here for 55 more minutes,
Oh yeah.
So I'm like intrigued though now. We won't go too much off onto that tangent today, but I'm super intrigued by that. So we'll have to maybe take that offline and chat more about it. 'Cause that's,
I would love to.
Cool. All right. Okay. So going back to sound healing, so it sounds to me like you discovered how it was actually healing yourself, right? You talked about you were dealing with depression and that was starting to lift. So let's talk a little bit more about that transition then. So you're interested in it. You said you had first heard the gong. Well, what do you do with that? Like you just decide like, I want to be a sound healer. And, so like talk more about that journey. 'Cause that's fascinating to me. 'Cause it is an amazing skill. I mean, there's so much involved in it. So, let's hear a little bit more about how that came about. Because I'm sure it was a lot of study and a lot of work and a lot of meditation.
You're so right. It is a lot of meditation and a lot of study. And what I find so interesting, just to kind of preface my answer, is that to study playing the gong or any sound healing instrument for that matter, is so much more than just intellectually learning like a set of techniques or even a philosophy. It's really about embodied experience, and you can't really rush that over time. So it's kind of that difference between knowledge and wisdom, which I think is really important today, because we've all kind of got knowledge available at the touch of a button. Like you can literally find anything on the internet. So it used to be that not everyone had knowledge, and kind of like having and not having knowledge set people apart. But now we've all got like equal access to knowledge. And what we don't all have is embodied experience of putting that knowledge into action and kind of understanding the effects that has in real life. And so something that's really important about learning how to do sound healing and kind of play those instruments in the most meditative way is that you really need to spend that time experiencing it. And so I have to say I'm really grateful to my teacher. So Tantar, he barely let us touch the gong for the first 3 months. In fact, a lot of people drop out because they're like, hey, I came here to learn how to play the gong. Right. What is this? And he insists that, we do a ton of meditations, that we learn a lot of philosophies from all different backgrounds that he feels are appropriate towards helping us to learn how to be, a gong player. And something that's really important too, in this role is to understand that you're not like healing other people, and you're not like some master who's like doing sorcery,
Right.
with like these sound vibes. You're facilitating a space for the proper frequencies to come through. And hopefully you've also prepared the students to open up their minds and their bodies in the proper way so that they can receive those sound healing waves. And then what happens is they are able to become empowered themselves and start like an alignment, a tuning, and a healing process. So I think I really went way off track with your question.
No, that's, I'm really, actually, I love that point you brought up about embodied existence, because I think now, especially, there's so many, and this isn't calling out any specific training or saying one's necessarily better than the other, but there's so much interest in the healing arts and yoga now, and there's so many certifications, some even just online. And it's so true. You said it perfectly, that we all have access to that knowledge. We can get the goods, but to have that experience and be able to pass that on and hold that space for others is an entirely different story. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because to me that makes all the difference in the world in an instructor or a facilitator, for meditation. So I think that is super important.
Yeah. And it's, I do believe it is possible to teach something that you can't do yourself in certain ways. I'm going to use an example. In high school, I was a lifeguard. And as part of the lifeguard thing, we had to teach swim lessons. And I could not do the butterfly. Like there was something about it. I couldn't do it. However, I was able to understand the mechanics of how you were supposed to be able to do it. And to my amazement, I was able to teach children how to do the butterfly when I couldn't even do it myself. So it is possible to sort of like teach people something that you can't do yourself, but in kind of the best like in the ideal experience and sort of the ideal world, you've experienced what you're passing on, or you're at least in the middle of learning it as well. I don't know. I do have to say that the decision to study it was just, it wasn't even a decision, Connie. It was I have to do this. It was just one of those. I had experienced how healing and transformative the gong had been for me. I had been experiencing it for about, I'd say like 6 months at that point. And I had started my Kundalini yoga teacher training, and the gong was just, it was just such a game changer. And I heard about this guy who put on these all-night gong concerts where like you go there and gongs are playing for 12 hours and you fall asleep and you wake up and they're still playing. And I thought, well, what is this paradise? Like, I have to get in on this immediately. And so when I was researching who he was, I found out that he offered training in playing, and he turned out to be Sotantar, who became my teacher. And just as soon as he said he offered training, I just knew, and I signed right up. It was, I also have to say, my biggest decisions in my life that I've made, like moving to California and taking yoga teacher training and other things, they've been these knowing, like this knowledge where I just knew with every cell in my body that I had to do it and I would figure it out later.
Oh, I love that, because that is a topic that comes up with a lot of guests, actually. Is it? Whether call it intuition or, just listening to that inner voice or the whispers from the universe, I know it's been called. But, that's very fascinating to me, because I would say, I don't have a spreadsheet or anything on this, but it is a topic that has come up repeatedly, and especially with people that are living their authentic lives, like you are. They're following that path that they're called to do. So, and lucky for us, you did follow it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. You're welcome. So let's talk a little bit more about how sound healing works. I know you bring this up several times in class, where we're talking about being in the flow there. I mean, this is actual science, right? Like healthier cells, you have said, are more receptive to wave. I'm probably not using the perfect scientific terms, and you will, but like waves passing through them instead of being rigid and not allowing that to happen. How does that fit in with actual healing in these sound baths or sound healings?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's a couple different approaches to take in discussing this because, like most things, it's incredibly complex, but it's also simple if you back up enough. One thing I also want to preface all of the science stuff with is that what's so exciting to me is that already with the instruments that we do have, we're able to measure and prove in clinical studies a lot of what sound does and how it helps us. However, I firmly believe that a lot of the additional ways that sound helps us cannot yet be measured by the instruments that we do have, and that eventually we will have the instruments to measure those, and then they can be, proven in the way that we're used to with like the scientific method and clinical studies. So I get super excited about being able to prove anything. And then the rest of it, it's true because you experience it yourself. You see your students experience it. You see others experience it over and over and over. And you just kind of wait for science to prove it. So science is at a really exciting point, I think, where we're moving really into quantum physics and being able to identify fascinating things that seemed like science fiction to us. And we're finding out they're real. So one of the things that can happen is that you can literally tune your body like it's an instrument. You know how like a guitar has strings, and if they're too tight or too loose, they're not the right pitch and they won't play the right notes. That's how our bodies are. Our nervous system, our circulatory system, our brain waves, they are all at different frequencies. And some of them are outside the realm of our actual ability to hear with our naked ear, but they're still riding sound frequencies. And if we could hear them all, we would hear that there are different pitches. And so depending on the frequencies that we introduce consciously or unconsciously to our bodies, we are able to tune all the different parts of our body, from our brain waves to our nervous system to our circulatory system and on down to like cells and how they vibrate. We're able to tune them up and down. So a lot of the study of sound healing is figuring out how to do that and what you want to tune things to. And it's as simple as like if you have two tuning forks and you ring one and put it close to the other will start vibrating at the same frequency as the first one, because there's something called sympathetic resonance, where things start vibrating at the same frequency as the loudest vibration around them. And we even see this in a very non-scientific experience, such as, someone walks in the room and they can just suck all the air out of the room, and you just kind of feel horrible all of a sudden. And people say, oh, that person's got really bad vibes.
Right.
Or you might have someone who comes in the room and everybody lights up and there's just something about them and they're just kind of magnetic and you can't turn away, and they make you smile and they elevate you, and you say they've got good vibes, or they're like, we talk about it. It's made its way into our language, and it's not just an expression though. And so we're those little tuning forks, and those people walking around with like really bad vibes or really good vibes are like the big tuning forks, and they're tuning us if we let them. And so you can like unconsciously be tuned by the things around you, or you can consciously tune yourself, and any combination thereof. And what I want people to understand, and one of the things that I'm so passionate about, is showing people how to tune themselves, that they do have control over this, and that they can change the way that they're feeling, which in turn allows them to change the way that they make choices in their life and the way that they live their life, with any number of techniques, some of which are totally free and you don't need anything. And then others, you could use a gong, you could use a tuning fork, you could use certain music. But everyone who has a voice and a mind is already equipped with the two things that they need to start tuning themselves.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So many questions, but I'll try to make this not be a 5-hour interview. So we'll get into the big tuning, right, with the gongs and where people can access things like that. But do you have, I know there's probably a lot of techniques and this is not a simple question, but you're talking about, we have the ability to tune ourselves. Could you give one or two fairly simple techniques that somebody can do to either protect their own energy, right? Like you were saying, when the bad vibe tuning fork comes into the room, how do we avoid that? Or conversely, how do we even amplify the good vibe tuning fork that comes into the room to really ride that wave too? Or how do we tune ourselves to be that good vibe?
Those are all such good questions. I'm going to choose to answer one of them for brevity's sake, and that is the one of how do you tune yourself, and how do you do it for free anytime right now. And in order to explain I'll explain how to do it, and then if it's cool, I'll throw a little philosophy behind it.
Yeah, no, I would love that. That'd be great.
So what you want to do, the easiest thing to do, is to do something that you've done before with me in class, which is to start treating the inside of your body to a little concert. And we want to call this humming to yourself, or disappearing into sound, where at a very low volume, almost such that if someone were around you, they might not be able to hear, you start humming. And instead of projecting your voice outward, you project it inward. And you start paying attention to not only the tone that it sounds like. And if you think you're a horrible singer or something, doesn't matter. This can be any pitch up or down the scale that makes you feel good. Usually it's the natural one that you would start with. And you start paying attention to how that humming sounds to your audible ears and also feels inside. You'll start to notice, oh my gosh, that's kind of making my chest vibrate, or, oh wow, my lips are vibrating, and oh gosh, my hip just kind of moved, and oh wow, I noticed my temperature's changing, and you just keep re-inhaling and humming at a very, very low volume. And if you do that for even just a minute, it's incredible, the changes that start happening. And I'm not going to list them now, but there's actually measurable changes to the brain, to the nitric oxide puffing cycle in our cells, and other things that happen physiologically that are partially to thank for the increased peace and happiness and relaxation that you'll feel during this practice. But the second benefit from it that is really the one that I appreciate, that kind of dovetails with my eternal quest for my own self-realization as well as for helping others find theirs, is that it clears the mind and quiets the mind so that you get a moment away from the mind that's just doing its job, which is analyzing and finding patterns and what if this and what if that and what if this goes wrong and what if that goes wrong. And you get a moment away from that by doing this practice, and suddenly you start to have intuitive understanding, which we were also talking about just a few minutes ago. You have a much clearer, direct access to that clear understanding that really resonates within your cells, and your mind often prevents you from embodying that. It kind of shoves the mind away and says, give us a minute. Right. We're tuning into our body wisdom, basically. That is our birthright. And just humming for a minute, it might sound unbelievable, but I encourage everyone to try it. And you might not want to stop. It feels ecstatic, actually. When I lead my classes in it, we'll do it for 15 minutes sometimes, and people are feeling just almost like they've just taken drugs. I mean, it's you just feel incredible.
Yeah.
And peaceful, and anything's possible, and you feel grounded. So that's a really easy practice to do. And you can do it whether you do this or not, but what it really requires to take it to the next level is the skill of deep listening, which I would really love to talk about before we end this podcast today.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it now. What's like
okay,
better time for sure. Yeah, let's dive more into that, because that's really what it's about. I'm guessing that's putting two and two together that leads to some of this intuition and bliss and everything else that's going on.
It totally does. Deep listening is really the key. It's really, if it sounds, I believe, Connie, that, there's people say we're a spiritual being and having a human experience, right? Or like, and no matter what your beliefs are or aren't about religion or spirituality or who we are really as consciousness, there's no denying that there's a part of us that isn't physical. And that's our consciousness, right?
Right.
It's not physical. It resides in a physical body, though. And the physical body is what enables that consciousness to communicate itself out to the world. And so we're both of these things. And the reason sound and listening, but the reason sound is so important is because it's the thing that both of those share. The consciousness operates on a vibratory level, and our human world operates on a vibratory level. So sound and vibration is like the bridge that allows you to unite the two. And that, in my experience, is the key to why sound is really the path to self-realization, and why it helps you get there faster, and why it helps you quiet the mind, and why it helps you connect with your intuitive self. It's literally the bridge that allows those two to intersect seamlessly, because we could be the monks up in the Himalayas who chant in caves and never come down and interact. And they're like really, and by the way, they're amazing. I'm not criticizing them, but they're not embodying their human body really. They're super into their consciousness. And then there's people who really are disconnected from their consciousness, and it's just all about their human body and their mind. And what really is ideal here, what I think is liberation for humans, is to be able to merge the two together, where you are able to take the best of both and use them as partners. And so does that make sense so far?
No, it totally makes sense. I've never really, I guess I've danced around it in my own head, but I love how you put it, that it's the bridge between the spiritual and the physical, really, and how necessary that is. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, so it totally makes sense. I think,
okay.
I honestly, if people take nothing else away from this time here we're spending together today, is how important deep listening is to access that and have both. So
yes,
for sure.
Okay, cool. So let's also posit that there's a huge difference between hearing and listening. Mm-hmm. Hearing is like a physiological thing where, your bone conduction, a vibration comes in through your ear, and there's a whole process, and you hear stuff. Listening is different. Listening is, what do you consciously pay attention to? And what's really interesting, which is, I'll touch on it for a second, it's kind of a whole other topic, is depending on experiences that we've had, we can unconsciously tune out certain frequencies and certain inputs, and that can actually have impact on us that is reversible with treatment. There's some really interesting treatments for different conditions where they find out that ranging from like ADHD to the spectrum and even depression, where they find that when they investigate what frequency ranges a person can and can't hear, they'll find certain gaps. Someone who never thought, like, it would be where you didn't think you had any hearing loss. You've never experienced any hearing loss, but they'll find that not only can you not hear within like certain frequency ranges, but you can't even get your voice to project those certain frequency ranges. There's gaps. And usually those gaps are, for example, if a man, say your stepfather, screamed at you every day and was very cruel, when you were a child, you might unconsciously be blocking out people with the same frequency range as his voice.
Interesting.
And it is.
Wow.
There's a whole music therapy, which is the Tomatis method, which focuses on restoring those lost frequencies and healing a lot of the conditions that result from them, which that's fascinating. I just, let's just put that aside for now, but that's just interesting to keep in mind.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. We'll side table that for now, but that could be like an entire another call. That is fascinating.
Right? It's incredible. And again, like when you think about listening as being that bridge to, kind of like your own consciousness,
right.
And you recognize that like part of that bridge has crumbled, like no wonder you're not feeling great in this area or that area. Like you literally can't get there. Your path is blocked.
Right.
Yeah. So anyhow.
Okay. Yeah.
So we consciously and unconsciously filter things out. In fact, we don't actually listen to most of the stuff that we hear. And so a listening practice is where we start to pay attention to what we're hearing. And a deep listening practice is where we completely open up and shove aside any preconceived notions about what we may or may not hear and how we may or may not feel about what we hear. And we just open ourselves up and listen to anything that comes through our ears. And incidentally, deep listening happens to get you into a meditative state quite fast. So that's like a super added benefit. And it is indeed itself a type of meditation. But even if you're not trying to do it for meditation, it has so many benefits. But so if you're doing a deep listening practice, you want to like sit there and open yourself up to hearing. You can just start by saying, I'm going to name every sound that I hear. And then you just start naming them. I hear the refrigerator. I hear a bird outside. I hear the mailman opening my mailbox and putting mail in. I hear the air conditioner. I hear my heart beating. I hear my breath. And you just name everything. And then once you've done that, you've named literally everything that you hear. Then you want to see if you can go even deeper and start naming the sounds that are within the sounds that you're hearing. And at this point, you're in meditation. Your brain waves are in meditation and you're feeling great and already getting all those meditative benefits. So that's a total bonus. And you're probably feeling pretty happy and pretty calm. But what's really great about deep listening, among other things, is that it helps you to start embodying an attitude of alignment. I like to say that we're either in alignment or we're in resistance. That exact quote comes from a wonderful teacher called Andrea Quinn. She's an empowerment coach for women, well, for women and men, but she leads these amazing women's courses that changed my life. Andrea Quinn, she's incredible. Look her up if you're in LA. She runs the most amazing courses for women. But anyhow, she says it like that. I've heard other teachers say it in other ways, and I experience it all the time. And it's most evident in sound, where you're either in alignment or you're in resistance. And I like to talk about if there's a siren that comes by, unconsciously, without even paying attention, you're responding with your entire body. You might have stopped breathing. You're holding your breath. Your shoulders are up around your ears. You've tightened your glutes. You're cringing all your face muscles. You might even be like putting your fingers in your ears or trying just psychologically to not hear the sound. That's total resistance. It's really affecting your body. And if you just start relaxing and being like, I'm going to do deep listening to this siren. Like, I'm not going to have this preconceived notion that I hate it. I'm going to go beyond this idea that I don't like it. And I'm going to, how does it make me feel? What does it actually sound like? What does that sound like? How does that feel inside my body? And you start investigating it, and it starts kind of just coming through you, and you're not like fighting against it anymore. And oftentimes what happens is it totally ceases to bother you, and it might even start to sound musical. It might start to sound enjoyable. And that's just one way to practice deep listening, is accepting all the sounds that you hear around you, trying to listen to sounds that you don't listen to normally. And when you're doing that humming exercise I talked about before, deep listening is a big part of that. And I just want to take it a step further and say that listening isn't just about what you hear, it's about how your entire body feels in response to a vibration. So check your temperature, check your blood flow, check your breathing, check your muscles and if they're tight or relaxed and how that changes, check your emotions, check your mental clarity, check your obsessive mind rolling over and over one thing and then all of a sudden maybe it stops doing that. And this is a great practice for people who are creative and who want to get creative ideas, because when you're able to relax and quiet the mind like this and you start listening without preconceived notions, like the most amazing ideas start to just blossom within you and you start to acknowledge them. I've had students and clients in gong baths who will leap up at the end and take their notebooks out and start writing down because they just like cracked their screenplay problem, or I've had an experience where I didn't know how to reconcile with somebody that I was estranged from. And after a gong bath, I immediately knew what I should say. And I wrote them a letter and everything got fixed. You can really, through deep listening, expand what's possible and get really incredible new insights.
Yeah, kind of break that conditioning. Because I can say, I'm so glad you brought up the siren example, because you have mentioned that a lot of times, and I've done that, and not just with sirens, but other noises. Like, we're so conditioned to having certain sounds, some be bad sounds, some be good sounds, that like you said, we physically tense and resist.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely not in alignment. We're in resistance. It is so simple, like just a siren or, your fire alarm, or I don't know, like it's maybe music that you think you don't like and it's annoying you, or the neighbors are noisy next door, or it could be a myriad of things, so many things. But just stop and dive in, and there's so many layers to it. So I'm
sounds within sounds within sounds.
Yes, yeah, and it is so worth it. And it's talking about different perspective.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead.
No,
sorry.
No, that's it. It opens up. It opens up an infinite number of perspectives, so you can tap into that creative side. And I would like to say we're all creative, right? Like, people might be listening, going, "Well, I'm not an artist, or I'm not an actor, I'm not a musician." But we're, you're creating something no matter what you're doing every day, right? So we couldn't always benefit from that fresh perspective.
That's so true. And I also want to say that if you open up your mind to something and you listen to it and you let it in and you're not resisting it, usually what happens is you cease to like have a problem with it or dislike it. But even if you don't, even if you're like, okay, I've stopped resisting, and you know what, I am actually not into this. And this could be a siren, or it could be a person's idea. Right. It could be a conversation you're having with somebody. It could be any number of very real world things. We practice with the sirens. We practice with the guy who's cutting like the grass outside, right outside your window at 7 a.m.
The leaf blower. We
practice with the leaf blower. But what we're really practicing, it's like an amazing practice opportunity, But what we're really working on is how to take that lesson and where it really matters. Like, right. When you're having an argument with somebody and you're like, you're doing against that person exactly what you're doing against the siren, And so if you can learn how to calm down, I'm not suggesting suddenly you're going to agree with that person that you don't agree with, but you'll suddenly be in a really powerfully aligned place where you can make much better choices about how you respond and what you decide to do and what you say and how you treat the scenario. Whereas when you're in resistance and you're all like tensed up and thinking too much, then you start reacting. And that takes a lot of your choice away, and you start reacting from a place of pain. Yeah. Whereas when you've taken that moment to accept it, like align with it and listen to it and check in with that, you can respond instead of react. And it's so empowering.
So true, so true. And this is just a good reminder for all of us that so much of this work that we're doing, I know a lot of times it's said the work we do on the mat or on the cushion, in the case of meditation, it's really the application into real life is where the real work and benefit happens, right? It's not necessarily getting into that perfect yoga pose or, perfect blissed out meditation. It's what you take into the real world. So, and this is like you're taking it into the real world and applying it in the real world in the case of deep listening. So, oh my goodness, we could just keep going. Now I have like all these like neuroscience questions, all these things, but I know we need to like head towards wrapping things up. But before we do, what should somebody be looking for? I know if they're local, obviously they can check in with the work that you do. I'd love for you to tell everybody where they can reach you, but also if somebody wants to do something beyond and on an individual level with the great tips you gave today of the humming and the deep listening to everyday sounds, what direction would you point them in to maybe?
Yes, there's a couple things. First is a book called Free Your Voice, and it's by Sylvia Nakache, and it contains so much information about how to use your voice to achieve a lot of the things that we're talking about today, as well as references to a lot of the scientific research that explains how it works the way it does. So Free Your Voice is a really great book. It's on Kindle as well. It's by Sylvia Nakache. And then there's also a book, and there's excerpts you can even find online for free, called Deep Listening, and it's by Pauline Oliveros. And she's a composer. She just passed away a couple weeks ago, actually. And she was a pioneer in deep listening and all the different ways that it can affect you. So those are two really great places to start. And they both have, especially Free Your Voice, has an extensive bibliography that tells you about way more books that are awesome that you can kind of dive into, from an oncologist who uses sound healing in concert with chemotherapy for all his patients and has seen unbelievable results, all the way to like super spiritual stuff, like how Tibetan monks use chanting and why that works and what happened when that was studied in labs. So those two resources are great places to start, I would say.
I'm totally on board with those. Oh my gosh. And then as far as like actual sound baths, I know they're becoming more popular everywhere. It seems like
they
in
are.
The last 3 years.
Very exciting.
Totally. And you're at Wanderlust Hollywood, part of Indigo Lab. You're there every Wednesday at 4 p.m. with Soundology. Yes,
I am. And I teach and guest and hold workshops at various other places here and there. I'm getting my website up and running. It will be up soon. There's a landing page right now if anyone wants to just sign up for the mailing list.
Okay.
It's soundologyhealing.com. So sign up for the mailing list, and I'll send you info when it's launched. But that will have a resources page. I'm going to be putting some meditations on there. It will have my calendar for my own sound baths. I'm going to start I'm in the middle of developing a training program to teach other people how to become sound healing practitioners, which I hope to launch next year. And, I do have the pleasure of knowing a lot of very talented, wonderful sound healing practitioners throughout the country who have so much integrity and heart. And so I also hope to, point to them on my website so that people, no matter where they're living, can maybe find some resources nearby.
Okay, that is awesome. Definitely. And also, as far as resources go, too, I will be putting everything Lauren just talked about as far as the books and her website onto the ladyballsradio.com show notes for the show notes for this episode. All of those resources will be there too. So if you've missed any of that, or you're driving and you didn't get to write it down, you can just go ladyballsradio.com and go to this episode, and all the links in the show notes will be there with all of that. So, Oh my goodness. All right. Okay. I know. I'm just like, I feel like this was such a launching off point for so many different things. You're going to be so sick of me in class. You're like, oh
never.
No. It's like, oh gosh, there's so many places to go with this. But we do have to go towards wrapping things up. So any last tidbits, or I know that's like such a big, we've covered so many topics, but anything you really want listeners to be taking away from this, or last points that you'd like to make?
Yeah, I do. I want to remind everyone that their truth and their power is truly within them. And, you need to free it. You need to unlock it if and when you're not accessing it, but it really is within you. And I hope that gives people hope and encouragement. And the other thing is that all the tools that you need to access and unlock that are free, really. Like I said, listening to yourself, using your own voice, even just plugging your ears and listening to what the inside of your body sounds like for a couple minutes can do wonders for self-empowerment and calming down the brain, calming down the nervous system, and allowing you to make more conscious choices from a more empowered place, no matter what the scenario is. So I say take everything. I'm also a big advocate of just having fun and seeing everything as an opportunity and fun. So, hey, next time those horns are honking, see what kind of musical landscape they can create for you, like your own little symphony, like unfolding all around you, like trumpets and strings and woodwinds, like from all the sounds around you. You can get creative. Like even like you were saying, Connie, like a lot of people think they're not creative. I agree with you. We are all creative. We express it in different ways. Some are considered more artistic than others, but they're all super creative, every single one of us. And just remember that you're a creator and you choose in every minute how you respond to something.
Yes. You're either in alignment or resistance.
Yes.
We get to pick, though. That is the beauty of it, is we get to choose which one it's going to be. So, Lauren, thank you so much again for being here. I'm so grateful for your time. And
thank you.
You're welcome, and your insight. I'm so excited for all the new things you've got coming up in 2017 and being part of that, because it's just all good. This is, like I was saying to you in class last week, I feel like your class at Wanderlust is a little Easter egg. It's like, of course it's on the schedule, but it's like, how does everybody in the world not know about how amazing this is, So I really urge you guys, if you are in the Los Angeles area, make a point to get to one of Lauren's classes on Wednesday, because they are freaking amazing.
Thank you. I love those classes. Every single one is just so special. Everyone is just so beautiful who shows up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you again, Lauren. And to be continued. I'm sure we will have to revisit this once your certification is up and running and everything next year, to dive more into that, to help people take the next step once they've gotten past.
That'd be great. That'll be really fun.
For sure. Awesome. Okay, everybody. We will catch you on the next episode.
Bye. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Today's episode is brought to you by the newly relaunched Spicy Fit Foodie and the 12 Burritos of Christmas. So if you're interested in some fitness tips and vegan burrito goodness, head on over to spicyfitfoodie.com. Those will be rolling out. Also, once again, thank you, Lauren, so much for being here today. And thank you, dear badass listener. We will catch you on the flip side. Until next time, stay ballsy.